Hello, we are here with Mr. Wachutka. How are you, Mr. Wachutka?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good. How long have you been at St. Louis Park High School?
As a teacher, I started here in '87, so it's been 30-some years, but I also was a student here, so I've been here a bit of time.
So why did you want to teach here at St. Louis Park?
Well, at St. Louis Park, there were a couple of reasons at the time. In the '80s, it was very difficult to find a teaching job, and so I started out state because that's where I could find a job. So I was out in the boonies, out in Springfield, Minnesota for a couple of years. Wanted to come back because of the pay scale in the city. And I found out from being out there that my wife was not at all interested in being a rural girl. She wanted to get back to the city. So I came back hoping to end up at St. Louis Park because, number one, they had an opening, and number two, I knew people, I knew the place, and it was a very well-respected high school.
Okay. What was the school like when you started here?
Oh, it's a bit different on many facets. One was the student population was much whiter than it is today, and we still had populations at that time there was a influx through immigration of Russians, and obviously the Jewish population in St. Louis Park has always been strong. But that was about the diversity, was Jews, Caucasians, Russians, and that was about it at that point in time when I started in the 80s.
And that was when you started as a teacher?
When I started as a teacher.
How about when you were a student?
You know, only about 7 years had passed, so it wasn't a whole lot different, but there was a bit more diversity when I came back. After graduating high school, going to college, working for a couple years, come back, it started to change up a bit.
When you were a student, did you know you wanted to work here?
When I was a student here, I wasn't sure if I would. I had a couple of options that I was looking at as far as my future. One was as a teacher, because I had an incredible science teacher here who taught geology and oceanography, and he was one of the reasons, he always has been the big push for me to go into education.
What was the total school population like when you started teaching
Well,
here?
my graduating class was in the high 600s, and we were on the move down from higher. So being 3 grades, it was probably about 2,500 in the 3 grades, 10 through 12. Whereas now we're 1,400 with 4 grades. You know, we had 2 junior highs of 7, 8, 9. When I was young, there were 10 elementary schools.
Wow.
So, there's been quite a bit of a shift as far as population goes.
Why do you think that's happened?
It's because of St. Louis Park and its age of development. After World War II, all the baby boomers were looking for their first homestead to buy. And St. Louis Park was a reasonable place, close to the city, a lot of opportunities, so a lot of families settled in here. And now you look at in your neighborhood, everybody seems to have that 1 or 2 old ladies that still are in their house from when they bought it. And I probably know them or their family after being here so many years and being a resident for so many, but they just don't leave. And it's a great, that's one of the reasons. And the other is, people with kids are more likely to move out another tier. When I was raising my kids, we were in Eden Prairie and Chaska because that's where affordable housing was. And it was hard to find a home in St. Louis Park.
What was the school like structurally, the building like when you started?
Well, where the field house is right now was our home baseball field. So that was not here. Other than that, structurally, not a whole lot. Externally, the footprint would be different. It was still the 2 wings and the circle, but everything was a classroom. The media center was on the 2nd floor, or the library at that time was 2nd floor, a hallway. 1st floor circle was all classrooms. All the circles look like the 3rd floor, with all classrooms around the outside. And that has since changed. The media center changed that. Art Tech changed up the 2nd floor. But other than that, it's looks a lot of the same.
Yeah, I've heard some stories from the about the baseball field out where the field house is from previous teachers and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah, it was a nice. You knew you had a home run if you could put it up on top of the roof, right out the window here.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember people doing that?
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
Like Ostad, I think it was Ostad maybe, because he was a pitcher. So
Yep.
he was telling me, like our class, he was like, "Oh yeah, I went out there and took a swing and hit one over the fence onto the roof or something like that." So yeah.
It was really nice to have a home baseball field
Yeah.
on campus.
Mhm.
It was really, people could just swing by and watch. It was more fun to have it on campus.
What have been some of the changes that you've noticed at SLP since you came here?
Lots of them. Some for the better, some that I don't think are for the better as far as some of the ways that we deal with things. But times have changed in the school. Education and places of education become more involved in what families used to do. So it's been a shift. So when I started, I mean, it was a pretty tight ship. You did not see people out of class. You just did not. Because they'd pay for it with detention or other punitive things for not being in class. So you just didn't
Because
see
it was okay for teachers to hit you in the hand with.
No, it wasn't. That was not okay then. No. No, it was just because it was just a tighter run ship. The administration felt that that's how, if kids are to be in class, that's what we should be supporting, and you just didn't see the number of people out wandering. And it was open campus, so usually people didn't stay here if they were skipping. They just leave the premises, and then it becomes somebody else's problem, not the school's. So that's one of the changes. I think it's been shifts in students as far as there's a greater need for immediate feedback and how am I doing now? A greater push, or it appears to be a greater push on, my GPA is the only thing that matters. Do I get points for this? Do I get points for that? What am I going to do about my grade? And it seems that has become more and more popular as far as the terminologies and the way that we speak of it, instead of speaking about the learning that's going on. It's all about, well, what is that outcome? And the outcome's yet to come. You'll find once you leave high school, your high school GPA doesn't matter one iota. It's what you do in college, and then that doesn't matter either once you get your first job. Because once you get your first job, no one cares what your GPA was. It's how well do you do this job. So, there's been some shifts there. I think that it's a lot more accepting of a entity, in that we are more accepting of the differences that we see in the cultures and individuality of students. I don't know that when I started here we'd be nearly as accepting of gender identities, sexual preferences, those types of things would not have been. But again, that's a reflection of the times.
So you think that the most prevalent changes have been shifts in ideas?
Ideas and ideals, more reflecting society. And with that, I would say more accepting of the left side of society. Not necessarily the more conservative approaches, but education typically reflects the more liberal aspects of society.
Well, we are in the most liberal precinct in the entire country, so. Yeah.
I was not aware of that.
What has been the biggest change at Park in your time here, and what did you think of it?
I don't know that I can pinpoint a biggest change. There's been a lot of little changes, and they have benefits and they have liabilities. One would be, when I started, we didn't have immediate grade knowledge to the student. Like when I if I grade a test and I enter it in Power School, 30 seconds later, I'm going to get an email about a retake. And it's like, whoa. Let's calm down here a little bit. And that's a big change, because it used to be conferences that come, and that might be the first time a kid actually knows what their grade is, or at the end of the quarter, hey, you're getting a B. Oh, I am. Now you could keep track of it yourself, but we didn't have that immediate feedback.
Mhm.
I think that's a big change. I think one of the other big changes is a communication piece. The amount of emails that I can't keep up to date on.
Do you think that the change as far as knowledge of grades and quick feedback, do you think that's a good change?
I think it's a good change, and I think it's also adds some anxiety to everyone's life. Because the number of people that freak out when they see something that, oh, I handed that in, or I'll have people run to my room the minute I put it in and hand in an assignment they missed. Oh, I forgot to hand this in. Well, we all need to take a breath frequently to calm down.
I think for me it would I would feel more anxious if I didn't know what it was, because I would constantly be thinking, oh, it's not high enough, and I would be working so hard, and it would turn out that either I'm doing the wrong thing, or maybe not necessarily that, but I'd be working so hard at it, and maybe the grades in my other classes were suffering for it, and it turns out I had like an A- already, and it's just moved my grade up to an A, and that's not a worthwhile investment of my time if my other grades drop to B+.
I find it interesting. Yeah, but you think of two things. One, that's what you grew up with. As far as education goes, is that's what you're used to.
Oh, you mean like
The immediacy of everything.
Oh.
So that's part of who you are. That's actually what we all are now, because that's one of the things that has changed. And the other thing that I found interesting is reflecting back on what I was talking about, grades and learning. That was your first go-to, was about, oh, but I might put in too much effort in this for that particular grade. I wish school didn't have grading.
Me neither.
But we still have to have a way to assess, because we can't give personal interviews for every kid, every direction they go in life. But I think if we weren't grading, and we're looking at, if there was a way to truly measure level of learning, I'd be all in. But I've not been able to figure out a way to measure learning in a system that we have now, where 150 kids, 170 kids are coming through. I can't know where their baseline level was, how much they improved, how much they really know. So we fall back on these tools we've been using for a long time.
Yeah, and a special difficulty with that is, how do you even measure learning? Like, what even is learning?
Well, and what we equate to that,
you're right. It's like studying. It's like people say that you should study. You know what studying is, but if asked to tell, or you know what it is as like an idea, or as a general concept, but if someone were to ask you to like study as an action, you might be like, what does that even entail? Like, do I do flashcards? Do I use practice quizzes? Like, what does studying look like? And learning is the same way.
And it might be none of the above. When I go out to do the things I like to do personally, and let's say I'm out hunting pheasants and I'm walking through a field, am I studying? Yeah, I am. I'm studying that landscape. I'm studying the interactions that are going on out there. Am I learning? Yes, I am. But it's certainly not for any other purpose than my own. So yeah, those are great questions, and we don't have answers to truly how we do a good measurement of learning. So we rely on standardized testing and testing of knowledge acquisition to the best of their ability.
Yeah. What has been a change that the school has gone through that you've liked?
Well, I think the acceptance and the respect of the individual as a student, less treatment of a group of people as just the masses. I think we've gotten a lot better at building upon relationships with students, and that it's more of a team approach than it was before. So I think those are things that have been hugely beneficial, is that the individual is the individual. We accept them for who they are, and we work within that realm.
Yeah. Is there anything the school has changed that you don't really like?
Oh, there are many of them.
Examples?
I'm trying to think. I think our tendency to expect kids to that it's okay. I think we're accepting of students not attending class, and we say it's not okay, but it ends up being, what are we going to do about it? I wish there was more purpose for every student to be in class, to see where that might take them. So that's one of the things that kind of bothers me a little bit. Is it a big thing? Probably not. I think changes in staffing numbers, class sizes are much larger than they used to be.
Well, what did class sizes normally used to be more like?
Oh, I would, if you got, it never went over 30.
Wow.
Never. I mean, that was kind of, 30's it. And part of the reason is because we're doing more with a similar chunk of budget, that not all that, it used to be all that budget went to the classroom so the class sizes could be smaller. Well, now we have a whole lot more going on. We didn't have GL or ASCs, we didn't have 2 assistant principals, we didn't have
an IT department or a need for one. We didn't have like
Right.
1,500 Chromebooks.
right?
Yeah.
And some of those are coming out of different budgets, but overall, those are going to be impactful.
What's the biggest class you've had?
The biggest class I've had,
Yep.
38, I think.
So you said there's a lot of things. How about like a change that was like starting this school year that you didn't like or thought was bad?
I'm trying to think. I can't come up with anything that really rattled my chain.
Like the new grading system?
You know what? At first, it kind of like, we're doing this new grading system. And then I was like, well, what the heck? I ran through the math, and mathematically it really doesn't change anything because we've been doing that 80-20 grading in our classes in science forever, or for many, many, many years. And so I kind of did the math, and it really did not bother me once I kind of understood the mathematics of it. Do I think it's just and right? I really struggle with that. I'm not, it's kind of like if I have someone come out to paint my house and they don't paint it, do I still pay them 50%?
No.
That's kind of my logic on that. But it doesn't hurt anyone, because it kind of fits with one of my classroom policies has been to have there be many optional assignments. So if you can't get that done, it's not going to negatively impact you, because people are busy, and different people are busy at different times. People have crap that comes up in life, and if you just can't get it done and it's not a real critical piece, then let it slide.
That sounds like a teaching style that would be popular with your students.
Well, I haven't gotten to the point of giving him much yet, because what I do is I start, because I'm only teaching 9th grade AP this year, so I start out pretty stringent, and then like as time goes on, I'll say, well, that could become optional, so you don't have to do it.
So it gets more So
Right.
as most teachers get stricter, you become more lenient?
What it is, I want to make sure they have a good knowledge of what the things are that may be benefiting them, and then figure out what really benefits you so you can focus on that. And if you feel something we're doing isn't benefiting you, then drop it off your plate.
So what do you think, like, of all the things that the school in its current state is doing, what do you think they could or should do differently, and why?
That's a big question.
Or a thing that they
Well,
could
no,
do
there's
differently?
a lot of things in there that philosophically I would love to see things shift. There was a point in time that we were, many years ago, prior to current administration, we had talked about a change in the schedule for the high school. And many people wanted to go to the 4-block day, which I think has some benefits. There's some liabilities with it too, but it does have some benefits. I'd love to try it once in my career. But myself, I'd like to see a day that is scheduled by students, and I don't know how they would figure that out. Because you would see ahead of time what you need to get done, and you'd schedule, it's like a mod flex scheduling that used to be done in the 80s. But I'd like to see broken down, the schedule, the strict schedule, so that if you don't need much time in math, you can take care of your math in 15 minutes because math is your jam. Either then you have time to do some deeper or some extensions in there, or then you could spend more time on another topic. But it relies on students being completely in charge of their education. And that's the part that is scary a little bit as far as pulling that off. But that's one thing I'd love to see a change in philosophically, is the schedule of the day. But we're not creative enough to figure that out.
And because emulating a college, or emulating the way that college schedules work, is difficult.
It's difficult.
And expensive.
And we sometimes forget that the adolescent brain is still in the process of developing. And to get to a point where like 15-year-olds are completely in sync with what they need when they're 28, that match doesn't happen. Which is why when you look at college campuses, what class has the biggest difficulty as far as performance? It's a freshman class. Number one, it's new to them, and number two, they're still developing that frontal lobe of their brain. That's what college is for, is to figure that stuff out.
Mm-hmm. What do you hope the school will look like in the future?
It'll look like a place without me, because I'll be moving on. Actually, I would like to. I'm not sure. I've thought about that as far as educationally. What should it look like in the future? And I'm not sure. I know we're missing the boat some places, but I think we're rock solid in other areas. We do a great job with certain students, but we're failing others. And I think really high school, why aren't we pushing more the trades, the opportunities that are out there without a college education? We say those words, but we don't have programming to support that to the extent that we should. We have some of it, but I think every kid should realize that I could go in and I could become a fire sprinkler installer and make more than the biology major for most of their career, if not all of it.
And does that include things like a home ec class or a cooking class?
Well, probably. I mean, those are skills that I think that should be a part of it. People should be, ultimately we should have learned that from our parents.
Yeah, but sometimes
we know that doesn't happen, always.
I think it's a combination of lack of interest and so much time spent dealing with schoolwork that you don't have time for it. And so I think that if it became schoolwork, then more people would know how.
Well, we used to have it, and we had a foods class that was dropped because of wasn't the interest at the time.
Mm.
But there are things that maybe should make a reappearance.
I'd take a cooking class.
But would you be able to fit it into your schedule?
Yes, I'd just drop something else.
Yeah. But that, and I think the personal finance piece is huge. I think there are things about there should even be things about, I know we incorporate these things into classes, or they're a part of smaller classes, but just the ability to maneuver society. We talk about those things, but we don't necessarily have a formalized approach, and maybe one isn't necessary.
Yeah.
Maybe connections and psych should just be kind of fused, so everyone has to take the psychology class and understand how people think, so that way you can understand how society works.
Yeah.
Instead of whatever the heck it's supposed to be right now.
Well, and let's go back in time to the question about maybe something we've done that I'm not real pleased with, and that would be, I'm not real pleased with how connections, what it's become. Because it was sold to us as it will not be any preparation for you as a teacher, that we will do these things without. Well, every time, like this last one, for my grade, there was a lot of preparation that should have been done, Well, I don't look at my connections 2 days ahead of time and figure out what I have to do. I'm going to open it that morning and see what's coming up in connections. And undoubtedly, at least with my connections, and I can only speak to mine because it's the only one I know, is I will say, all right, here's what's on the docket today. Who's in? And most of the time I go, no, not interested. And I feel bad because someone put some time in to put those things together. I'm not faulting anyone. I just think it's kind of run its course. I think it was a good idea, maybe post-COVID, so we can get back to some of that social emotional side of things, but maybe a shift needs to happen there.
Yeah. Well, many kids know that you've been here for a long time, and I'm guessing people would like to know if you have a funny story that you've seen at Park.
Oh, there's been a lot. There's been many things. Funny, I don't know of a hilariously funny, shareable thing. But I do have one that just sticks to mind because it's been with me since literally my first years here. There was he was the work experience coordinator, so he worked in the job piece for
The internship.
It was pre-internship. It was really for 15 and 16-year-olds to get out in the workforce. And it was usually students that weren't finding school a good connection, so it was a way for them to work, get credit for working, make a little money, kind of get them in the job market, more on the labor side, because when you're 15, 16, you're going to be working food service, basically. And he was a coordinator of this, and he and I were very good friends, and we learned that we shouldn't sit together by staff meetings because we would misbehave and I'd get in trouble. Well, one day, he and I were standing in the hallway one morning before school, and there was this English teacher this was on second floor A hallway by the staff lounge. We were down where it goes to the C hallway just talking, and this English teacher walked out of the restroom, and she had toilet paper dangling out of her bottom of her dress because she caught it in her nylons as she got up, so it was this long tail of toilet paper. And we were laughing without showing it. But the worst part is, neither of us said a stinking word. We didn't say a word to her, we said nothing, and I still feel bad about that to this day. But it was so hilarious to us that here goes this, that classic thing you'd see in the movies where a teacher's walking out with the toilet paper dangling behind them. That was a good one. I enjoyed that one for many, many years.
Yeah, that's a good story. Just one last question for you. How long do you think you'll be here?
I don't know. I retired last summer, came back part-time because two things. It was teaching a class I love to teach, and that would be the only thing, so I'm back part-time. I don't have other things I want to do as far as a job goes, but I'm not ready to quit working. And I can't go fishing every day. There's just, I can't fill it with things of that type.
Not enough fish to catch.
That's right. I just don't know. It might be this year. It just kind of comes to me as we get towards the spring. I'll kind of see how I feel and assess the year and say, okay, I can do this again. Or say, no, that's enough.
Makes sense. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, not really. I was just trying to think of some things that had come and gone, but they weren't that impactful that I remember them, because the place is always in flux. It's been changing ever since I got here. It'll continue to change. And some of the changes you just kind of roll with because you might not be the person that has the best idea and someone else has a better one. And so you just give it a whirl and you move on. So, when you're asking me about all these changes, there's been hundreds of them, but not all of them have been hugely impactful to me.
All right, then. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for
Thank you guys
for coming on.
Thanks for coming on.
You bet.
All right.